papers are due today. If you can't get them into me today, you should talk to me because I'm a lot more lenient about whether or not I grade you down if you're responsible about it. And if it just comes in late, there's every chance without talking to me, there's every chance I don't even accept it. Okay? So I haven't looked at my email box, so I might be talking to the wrong people here this way, right? We left off talking about Mondrian. And P. Mondrian, a Dutch painter. And we were talking about this very difficult issue of abstract art and how do you approach abstract art. And really one of the key elements is to think about abstract art as an escape from the world. Right? You want to leave the reminders of the physical world behind. And P. Mondrian, like Kandinsky, had a very particular reason for doing this. Right? He believed in that philosophical movement called theosophy that believed that the only way that you can understand and sort of achieve a personal harmony is to understand a universal harmony that is there but is clouded or veiled or obscured by the chaos of the world. And if you can avoid looking at the chaos of the world, then you can understand that harmony and maybe then, feel it, get it within. And so people like Mondrian, even though it's hard to imagine this, think of themselves as expressionist painters. Because they're getting to human expression in a way, right? The deepest, really very, very humanist painting in a way. Because it is an exploration of why we exist. How we coexist, and turning your back on the problems, the chaos of the world in order to achieve this is almost monastic in a way. You're getting in, and we talked about that with Mondrian. That you can tell the meticulousness that he paints things that aren't meticulous. The meticulousness of which he paints those white areas are really pretty stunning. And you can almost imagine him meditating as he does it, escaping. It becomes not an extension of our world, but a different world that he can go into. And the important thing about this for us, this is kind of what we'll be talking about today, is that he gets to this point during World War I. Right? That this whole movement toward full abstraction, toward turning your back on the physical world happens in European art, more or less coincident with World War I. I was just reading this morning, the New York Review of Books came, and there's a thing about American art during World War I, and it was very interesting. I never really thought about this. On the National Mall, there is no monument to World War I. Like, it's the only one, right? Because it's sort of America's forgotten war. And and it was even mentioned, everybody can talk about why did we get to World War II? Everybody knows, right? Cancer, boom. But what was it about Archduke Ferdinand that got us into World War I? Okay, it was the city of Lusitania, right, that got us in. But the bigger political context, I don't even know. I'm a professor, Anyway, World War I, the bottom line is that what World War I did, right? The Great War was doing was revealing to people that we had amazing ability to hurt each other, like never before. That all of the technological progress of the Industrial Revolution was leading to tanks and airplanes and mustard gas. It's really, the sort of senseless human destruction on an unprecedented scale. You have to think, for theosophists like Mondrian, Kandinsky, that's the chaos, right? That's the thing you want to turn your back on. And so when Mondrian starts to move from still lifes that are beginning to get these horizontal to paintings that ditch everything, there's no reference between those paintings and the world outside, you have to wonder the degree to which this is inspired by the horrors of the real world. Right? The real world is just full crap. Why bother? You know, you can see there's a reaction against that. And it's important that Mondrian does this really during the war. That's when he arrives at this solution. And he'd been working in Paris prior to World War I as an expat, right, Dutch. And when the war broke out, he was actually forced to move back to Holland. And he does this all alone as well. He's not working with other artists when he's back in Holland. He's only working with other artists when he's in Paris. And he goes back to Paris after the war. So that idea of Mondrian working in isolation in Holland, which was not involved in the war, they were neutral. Right? So he's witnessing the horrors, but he's in a sort of safe spot, isolated. I mean, when you think about his paintings as this immersion into that, that becomes even more poignant, right? Kandinsky, too, moves to he begins to move to full abstraction before the war. So he mentions, like, December of 1913, he tells us he does the black lines on the right. He says, it's the first painting he did that didn't really start somewhere else. Does that make sense? When we looked at Improv 31, we talked about the fact that it's called Sea Battle. And the reason for this is that he started with something representational and he abstracted that. But he left reference points, right? Maps and splashes and explosions and whatnot. Now, this is before the war, right? World War I is 1914. But by the end of 1913, he begins to paint things that he says in his journals didn't start from a subject matter, didn't start from observation. Right? They were creations from the get-go. Right? And what's interesting about Kandinsky is that he's working in Munich. He's a Russian. Right? Vasily Kandinsky, you probably tell that from his name. Right? He's a Russian working in Munich, in Germany, and when the war breaks out, he's also got to go back home. Because during war, expats can't stay on, right? So he goes back to Russia. And what's interesting about him, he's already found an escape. He altogether stops painting for a year. Like, this isn't even enough. It's just such a trauma, the outbreak of the war, that it has a huge and profound impact on the artists we've been talking about. Okay? And the thing we haven't really addressed yet is the degree to which that traumatic event, the Great War, affected the course of modern art. Okay? And that brings us to the last movement we're going to look at, which is Dada. Dada artists. And we'll talk more about this, but they began in 1916, midway through the war, in the city of Zurich, Switzerland, which, as you probably know, was also neutral during the war. Switzerland has not been involved in a war in over 500 years, right? Orson Welles and The Third Man, right? What do you get? It's a cuckoo clock. But they've not been involved in a war in forever. And in Zurich, a group of artists gets together and specifically sets forth an agenda of protest against the war. And for them, right, they said basically, while bombs are crashing around us, we made art. And as you can see, it's totally abstract as well. Right? So this reversion into abstraction, we really can't separate it from the trauma of the war. And the fact that most of our major practitioners of fully abstract art, non-representational art, are working in neutral centers during World War I. Holland, Russia, Switzerland. Russia was neutral as well. Right? We'll see also America prior to 1916. Same thing. We were neutral. Right? Also, we get abstract art beginning there. Right? We can't discount this as being almost a cause and effect. I don't like cause and effect, because we're coming close. Right? Now, what is this Dada movement all about? Dada as a group, there's various manifestos out there, basically said that human intellect has led us into the war. Human intellect developed technology, technology led us into the world. Therefore, we as a group, this is what our thought artist said, we as a group reject order and reason and logic. It kind of sounds like romanticism, doesn't it? Right? But for a very different reason. It's politically motivated. If reason got us into the war, right? If rationality is what led to, the Industrial Revolution, which led into the war, then we don't have nothing to do with it. And they want instead to try to make an art, right, that embraces irrationality, that has nothing to do with rational thought processes, right? And Jean Arp, or Hans Arp, he's Swiss, so his name is both in French and in German, right? Jean and Hans are the same name. Decides to try to make art that is entirely dictated by chance. And the idea of it being dictated by chance is that rationality doesn't enter into it anymore. And the way he does this is he takes two different pieces of colored paper and tears them up, right? And he just lets them drop onto another piece of paper. And wherever they landed, he glued them down. Utter chance. He's not thinking it through. He's just ripping them up, willy-nilly, letting them fall, and wherever they fell, he decided to glue them down, right? So it picks them up and glues them back down right where they were. And that's how we ended up with the composition. So the composition is almost what do you want to say, a figurehead for this idea of the artist not arranging anything, right? Not thinking it through, just letting it happen, right? A collage arranged according to him. Now, if we come back to Dada, this was the central tenet. One of the central tenets was to make an art that isn't art. It's theory heavy this way, right? They're gonna try. They don't want to even call themselves artists. They want to try to make an art that isn't really art. Now, if we think about this is exactly where modern art has been heading anyway. We've been trying to make an art that doesn't follow the rules of Western art. We've talked about a number of artists who are trying to make an art that doesn't follow the traditional rules. But when we get to Dada, there's almost a culmination of that. This is an art that doesn't even want to be seen as art. And the first step toward that is to remove the rational mind and the hand of the artist. And the artist is so important because they play a role in the conception of the piece. But the actual idea of craft, of schooling, of learning to draw, right? Perspective, rules, modeling, all the things that art school would teach you are sort of thrown out the window when you're dropping paper on paper and gluing it down wherever it lands. Right? Yeah.
Now, why people make fun of art with millions of dollars?
I think that people make fun of it because they don't understand it. And it's much easier to bring it down to your level of misunderstanding than it is to try to dive in and understand it, right? But what's important here is that what we're seeing with this is really something that's kind of important for 20th century art in general, modern art in general, which is this idea of, you've heard of performance art, right? Where there's no real product at the end of it, the actual artistic thing is an event that's over when it's over, right? So someone gets up and there was a really famous one. Guy got arrested for going out and this was back in the 60s and shooting a gun at airplanes on the tarmac, right, before they had taken off, and of course he got arrested before we were worried about terrorists and whatnot, right? But a famous performance artist just died, Vito Acconci. I don't know if you guys are ready for what his most famous piece was, but go look him up. He just died like last week. But this is what it is. It's about the artist in a different way. When we think about Leonardo, we think about his own personal style. We think about idea of him touching the canvas in some way or another, right? And laying down paint, and the ideas coming through that. But this is now, there's something happening here, or the ideas are within the artist, and they may come out in the work, but in a somewhat different way, right? That the making of the work becomes part of what the work is, and almost more important than the finished product, right? That idea of tearing up the paper and dropping it is the most important part about this. It's not how it ended up. It is being the most important thing. Right? And there's where Manet comes in as being so important for a modern art dance. Because remember what the journalist who wrote in support of Manet said? It doesn't matter what he painted. It matters that he painted. Right? It matters that he did it. So this is, again, if you think about that idea, that nutshell, that, the luncheon on the grass, the Olympia, it doesn't matter what subject matter he chooses. What matters is that he decides to tackle it. What matters is that he goes at it. Right? And if the subject matter doesn't matter, right? If the subject isn't important, then this is where we're headed. To where it doesn't matter what it looks like at the end. What matters is that the artist is engaged with an idea and working it through. Yeah.
So, what gives these artists like credibility?
That's a good question. What is the credibility?
Somebody wants to make something like this and look at how they are, so nobody would be able to.
And how did they get to be known? Right? That is a good question. Okay, I will back it up with a few things. Right? Because we talked about the fact that class was a bit difficult on Monday, right? This is going to be even harder. Right? Because it's going to sound like they're yanking your chain. I think what gives them credibility, and as I mentioned in class on Monday, when I was an undergrad, I thought I was having my chain yanked. I thought it was just like ridiculous, But what gives them credibility is that it's not just me saying this about it. It's not like a bunch of learned people going around looking for stuff and going, well, this is what it means, art I support, right? They were writing about it as well. And they were very, very clear about their processes and their, the means and the ends that they were trying to achieve. In addition to that, with many of these artists, we saw this, I can't remember, were you here on Monday? Right? So remember that Mondrian, for example, who we started off with, could paint and draw. He just chose not to. Right? And these are the other things that give them the credibility. They're all well-trained artists, for the most part. Turkson wasn't. Right? He's the one of the few that wasn't. But for the most part, these people came through traditional academic training. And I could show you works by him, even while he's doing abstract stuff, that look nothing like this. But still, so if the credibility comes from the old traditional idea that there is a craft that one must learn, if you buy that, and I'm not even sure I buy that. I think the ideas are more important than the craft. I'd rather see somebody with good ideas and crappy drawing skills than someone who's a fantastic craftsman and has nothing to say. That's why I gave up art. I was a very good draftsman. I'm not bragging to them. I was good. Everybody told me I was a very good draftsman. I had nothing. I had nothing. I just sat in on Sarah's figure drawing class this semester for part of it. So I stuck up in the hole. I got nothing to say. I can just draw well. I can remember the form. That's not a problem for me. Right? But I didn't have anything to say. And that's why I do this instead. Right? Because I got something to say here, I think. Right? So, what gives them credibility? Okay, so on one hand you can ask that question about and answer it in the fact that yes, they did have technical skills that don't appear in this work, but that gives them the credibility, and it's perfectly okay to branch away from that. On the other hand, then you can question, is that really what's the issue at hand? And how do you answer the issue of credibility? And that was the first part of my answer, which is that they did explain what they were doing. And when we look at those, they're not just sort of random, stupid thoughts. They're actually grounded in really strong philosophical trends that one can trace to the 19th and 20th century as well. Right? They're deep thoughts. They're not just like winds, So despite the chance part of it, and despite the fact that they're reacting against rationality, it is an incredibly thoughtful movement, right? So, but thank you. That's a really tough question, right? What gives them that credibility? That's something we've been talking about in this class, right? It was authority and credibility, right? So, okay, so Dada. Coming back to Dada, give some more background on this movement, right? The group of artists was not just visual artists. There were poets, there were playwrights, there were musicians as well, all of which bonded together into this artist collective that called themselves Dada. And they said that this whole idea of rejecting order, rejecting rationality, was in fact a concerted reaction against the war. And for them, one of the principal ways to embrace irrationality was to embrace the element of chance, right? The unplanned being the final object, okay? The way they came up with the term Dada is actually a nice little microcosm of exactly their ideas. They were looking for a name of their group. And the way they said they found it is they took a book, right? I'm going to use a folder. They took a dictionary, back dictionary, laid it on the table. They did that, right? And that was it, and that's how they found it. And they looked only hit the German word Dada, which means hobby horse, right? A little stick with the horse's head, right? That's the German word for hobby horse. Perfect children's toy, right? Where's the logic in that? Or let us just stick with our head. I don't see it. Right? And nor do I believe that he actually dropped these things and didn't shoot you around it. Because there's no overlaps, right? But this is a story they tell. Dada, right? In addition to that, Dada is also one of a child's very first words. Right? Dada, mama. It's why those words come that, right? Even in German. So, the idea for them of naming themselves Dada is this sort of primal, pre-logical phase of existence, right? That they're trying to get back to, right? So this is Dada, okay? They used to make Dada poems by taking the newspaper and cutting it up into individual words, dropping those words into a paper bag, shake it up. They'd reach in and grab a word, reach in and grab a word, reach in and grab a word, and that would be the poem. Would be whatever order the words came out of the paper bag randomly, by chance, right? Not looking, not determining it ahead of time. And they would recite these in a cafe. They had a cafe in Zurich called Cabaret Voltaire, which became the name of a sort of a post-punk band in the 90s, right? 80s and 90s, named after the Dada movement. Dada has all of this incredible legacy. When I was in college and grad school, one of the most popular bands was Talking Heads, and they are all over Dada. Their concert movie is called Stop Making Sense. It's Dada, the big suit, right? Anyway, they would read these poems as performance pieces with Dada musicians playing music that they simply called noise, where they would play things without music, just bleeding against each other, often with mechanical things like fans, playing at the same, industrial fans, whirring and whatnot, right? And this was their response to the rational world, which is making all this noise with World War I, right? This is our noise. Now, obviously, this is very much like a collage, right? In a way, we've got pieces of paper stuck to pieces of paper. And it's at the same time a reaction against the traditional collage. Traditional is not that. These are brand new things, right? Picasso and Braque invented the collage right around 1912, 1913. So this is a brand new art form. And what they're doing is just saying, all well and good, but heck with the planning, right? Don't try to orchestrate, to synthesize a particular experience. Use it instead to focus on the idea of chance. Art took this a bit further, and he did cut wood variations. This is in the National Gallery. It's fairly thick. But he's evoking the idea of things falling where they may by chance. Right? He calls it forest. We have something that looks like a pebble, leaves. The idea of walking around and seeing things having just fallen in a particular way. Now, have you ever, I don't know about you, but when in the fall, right, in the autumn, when the leaves are on the ground, sometimes you walk and you just look at, God, that's beautiful, look at the range of colors you have around here, you know? And they're laying on each other in a way that nobody ever planned. But it's just gorgeous. Who's to say there's not some art in that, you know? So he's evoking this, but he's also evoking, again, the idea of trying to look unskilled, because he uses his jigsaw as rough as he can, without trying to make nice clean edges, like we would ask you to do if you were doing this in our class, right? He's at the point where he doesn't have to do that, and he's laying them over each other with the bolts that hold them together very obvious still, right? You can see the heads of the bolts that are not nailing these different pieces of wood on top of each other. Here's a view from the side, so you have a sense of the thickness of it, right? It's not on display, they have it up high, I'm not quite sure why. They've got it sort of above eye level at the National Gallery, so you kind of look at it from below. But again, it's totally embracing this idea of irrationality. It's things falling where they may, this is inspired by that, right? The chance nature of gravity. But it's also intentionally sloppy and rough. And we know this from other works by art, that the idea, it says the torn things and intentionally sort of rough-edged, right? So it's anti-art. It's anti-craftsmanship. Everything about Dada is sort of doing something that is the opposite of what it really is. If that makes sense. Right? And they even would say that we're not really artists. We're part of a movement. It's part of a protest. Now, Dada spread. Zurich was the epicenter, right? But by the end of the war, there were Dada centers everywhere. It became the movement of the 1910s and 20s. It spread internationally. And there was a Dada center in New York City. You thought this stuff was tough. What are we going to do with this? Right? The center of Dada, New York, was an expatriated Frenchman named Marcel Duchamp. Right? He had moved to New York at the outbreak of the war. He had escaped the war. Right? Hid out here, became a naturalized American, spent the rest of his career here. Spent the rest of his life here is a better way of saying it, because by 1921 or so, 1924, he's given up art altogether. As you might expect, that would be a perfect Dada thing to do, right? I'm not even making art anymore. You know what he did for the rest of his life? He played chess. He became a professional chess player, right? And I guess the liberation of motion, and he's moving to something that's totally rational, and there's no lasting thing from it. Turns out he was making some stuff, but he wasn't showing anybody yet, which is also kind of a Dada thing to do, right? So this is perhaps his most provocative piece, and certainly one of his most famous is this fountain, which was done while he was here. And remember that in 1916, when Dada starts in Zurich and in New York, we aren't in the war yet. America does not enter World War I until 1917. So we are a neutral country. It's another of these places where modern art is thriving in these places that are not involved in the war. Now, what art had done for us is to begin to question the role of the artist, right? Do we really need the artist to actively touch things to make them art? Or can chance enter into it and foul all of our best plans? Right? That's kind of one of the things that's coming out of Arp's work. Duchamp takes a step further and says, in this case, he didn't do anything. He took an old porcelain men's urinal. Right? There are 5 of us in this room who know exactly what this thing is. Right? And he turned it up on end. That's all he did, right? So it mounted to the wall with the bullet holes that you see down below. Right? Would have mounted it to the wall. And that's the basin in the back of it. Okay? So all he did was turn it up-ended it and sign it. And he didn't even sign it with his own name. Right? And the signature looks like somebody holding it with the hand they don't normally write with. You know? It's not a nice scripted signature. It's scratched in like graffiti. Right? Like it's been carved into it or whatnot. Right? And it dates it. And so, what makes this art? This is the big question, right? If the artist's role is not that important anymore, then what is the artist's role here? Duchamp has explained it. Again, it doesn't matter what it is, it matters that the artist engaged with it. And what Duchamp sees his primary role as being is as someone who designates art. He's the idea guy. He sees things that no one else sees. Right? The only thing, right, this is kind of what, if we want to still have something you can get your hands on, right? The only thing that separates art from everyday life is the intervention of the artist. Now, go back, right? What makes Millet's Gleaners, right? What makes that art? It's a scene of everyday life. Something you would just see. What elevates that to art? Is it just the skill of the artist? Arguably, then it's the intervention of the artist. At what level does the artist have to intervene? Picasso's got found objects here that he's brought together. Right? They're just things. So that tablecloth. He didn't print that tablecloth. Right? Or that, the drapery in the upper left and the tablecloth on the right. And even his drawing of the coffee cup is a little on the left side. But he's the idea guy. He's the one that's bringing it together. Duchamp is taking this, again, to the extreme. What is the artist's role? To bring the ideas. Right? To intervene in those things in the world around us. And you know what? This is what I think I didn't get when I was an undergrad that I get now. Since the dawn of time, things that we call art, and this is whether it's visual art or literature, good literature, or music, they make dance. They make us see the world in a different way. They make us think twice about our experience. That's what it should do. That's what art is supposed to do. It is supposed to send you out wondering whether what you assumed in the first place is really right or not. Isn't that what education is all about anyway, right? We don't come in here to hope to have all of our preconceptions supported. That's not education. That's indoctrination, right? We might get some of them supported, but we might get some of them where we get our teeth kicked out. We just don't, oh, crap. That was so wrong. Or I don't know why I just don't think it's right. But that's good. You're questioning it. You're never going to look at a toilet the same way again. I guarantee it. Right? Doesn't that make that art? He is going to make you experience your world in a different way. You're going to start looking at things and saying, is there a possibility that I can do something with that no one's thought of doing with it before? In this case, the intervention of the artist has changed the facility of the piece. Right? He calls it fountain. Okay? Now just think about that, guys. It gathers fluid, right? You stand away from it, you're the fountain. Right? We stand away from it, we don't sit, right? We stand. So when we pee into the urinal, right? It sprays in. A fountain sprays out, doesn't it? Right? It's the opposite. He's intervened and he's literally upended the meaning of the piece. And even if we think about that, right, the bit where the water drains, which are the 5 holes, now appear to be the bit where the water would come out. And the flush unit, which is the rough part where the pipe would attach, which is where the water would flow into the urinal, is now ostensibly the place where the water would flow out. So, for Duchamp, the intervention of the artist means that the meaning of the work, the meaning of the object, has been totally changed. And that means he wants you to look at it differently. Now, maybe he also even thinks of these porcelain objects, right, as having an intrinsic attractiveness in their shape. That only when it's divorced from its context will you actually look at it. I don't know, have you ever seen sort of old snake laying by the side of the road and go, it's kind of nice, you know, it looks kind of like maybe a part of a fragment of an old Greek sculpture or something. It's round, it's white, it looks like marble, you know? The found object, right? That's what we have here as well. Right? So, where are we going with this? I'm so far off my notes. I have them all in nice, logical order, right? This is an extension of the collage. It is a collage. It's just a single object, right? And it's a three-dimensional object. Now, Picasso made three-dimensional collages as well, right? I didn't show you any of them. So, it's important that he intervened, right? I don't know what I've got this here. I don't really want it there. So let's move ahead one. He called these things ready-made. I think this is where we're going to get into the part of Duchamp that is a little bit more fascinating because he's actually kind of funny. He has a wicked and very sardonic sense of humor. And he's working in America, he's making these things. He's finding these objects and he's designating them as art. Right? And all he tends to do is either to title it and sign it. Right? And that's all he does to make it into art. And sometimes, like I said, the signature is not even his. So, the humor of it, right, of the snow shovel, he titled In Advance of the Broken Arm, with the idea that when you pick up a snow shovel, there's every chance you're going to go outside, you're going to slip and fall and break your neck, right? In advance of this is what happens. This is before the broken arm, right? So he's kind of putting his tongue in his teeth and laughing at it. There's the signature right here, which is his real name in this case, right? So he calls them ready-made, and he gets the term from the industry term for a non-fitted men's suit, right? A ready-made suit, ready to wear. That's a porte, right? A ready-made suit. I buy ready-made suits. I don't have any suits, but the suits I buy are ready-made because I cannot afford to go get fitted, right? A bespoke suit. It's thousands of dollars. Right? A ready-made. And the idea is that the world produces these things en masse. And they have a use to each and every one. It's ready-made for you. So he refers to these as being ready-made for him. And they're all mass production objects. It's an important thing for Duchamp. Because mass production is the antithesis of artistry, isn't it? In a way. And wasn't art talking about the fact, or working with the idea that the artist's intervention is not necessarily all that important? It's anti-art. Well, mass production is anti-art, in a way. So you think these mass-produced objects, they're just everywhere around us. Every one of them looks exactly the same as the other one. And he's turning them into art. And that raises the question of, and again, if you think about it, I'm looking at you as a question. But if the question is, what gives them credibility, and you think that they don't, then you better have a good set of criteria for what gives people, what not gives people credibility, if this falls outside the text, right? And the other set of criteria is, I know what art is, and that don't make that. Then you don't have to be able to say exactly where, what the delineating separation is. Right? And very good can do that. Right? And Duchamp is actually just calling it into question, isn't he? He's making us, if you don't buy it, then you'll be better off for having seen this work, because now you got to figure it out. And if you come up with a search for something, great. Go for it. Right? But you'll have to, and you wouldn't have to with a Leonardo picture. You know? It's easy. Or a realistic. Right? And the fact that these are so challenging is part of what keeps them unpopular among so many people today. And they were certainly unpopular in the 1930s when the fascists came to power throughout Europe, right? They wanted to burn all these things because they suggest that what I think about it, and what you think about it, and what you think about it is different. And fascists don't want us to think independently. They want us to think the same thing when we see something, right? So these remain for us incredibly difficult works, right? These ready-made by Duchamp. But I want to point to a couple things about this idea, the Dada idea of anti-art, right? Part of that is raised in his signature, which is also, like the title of this, meant to be funny. He wrote his own defense in an editorial in the newspaper. He signed it with a different pseudonym, right? Not even Marcel Duchamp, not Armat. And he wrote, whether Mr. Richard Mutt, gives his first name, right? Rich Mutt. Whether Richard Mutt with his own hands made the fountain or not has no importance. What matters is that he chose it. Right? Now, by identifying him as Rich Mutt, he's playing on words. Now, he's a Frenchman living in New York, right? He's aware of language differences. He also speaks German, right? And he's playing with these ideas. Mutt is a mongrel dog, right? It's a mixed breed dog that's usually not prized, right? But it's rich at the same time. He's moving off with that, right? And here, in Advance of the Broken Arm, right, a title that's meant to be funny. He took again, this is a mass-produced postcard of the Mona Lisa, right? Got it in Paris, when our return trip to Paris, picked up the postcard, drew a mustache and a goatee on it, and wrote this at the bottom, right, and signed it, right? Actually, it sounds more like when I signed it, you saw. LHOQ. Anybody speak French here? Any French speakers? If you say those letters out loud in French, right? It's made a ton. LHOQ. L. H. O. O. Q. L-H-O-Q. She has a hot ass. Or she has fiber, or she has a fiber in her hair. Right? It is L-H-O. He's again playing with language, and he's playing with what happens when the artist intervenes. Right? What happens when an artist intervenes in whatever the subject matter might be? The point is that you won't look at it the same. Right? The point is that it changes it from something mundane and everyday into something that makes you think about the world differently. Right? Will you ever look at Mona Lisa again and see about the least sexual thing out there that we've seen in this entire class? Right? And you don't think of her as that, but Duchamp wants you to. Right? And in fact, there's an undercurrent of sexual metaphors in all of his work. Right? It just keeps coming back up again. Okay, the Armat thing. Armat also means, right, like kind of rich man, if you really thought that was the name he was giving it. Armat in Germany is the word for poverty. So again, he's playing with words again and again and again, with layers and loops of meaning, right? And the question is, what does he mean by poverty? What's impoverished here? Is he mocking himself? I got nothing to say, right? The impoverished artist. Could it just be that whole theme that we always talk about, the starving artist, right? Could it be that normal art ain't cutting it anymore? That the traditions of art are impoverished now? Right? These are all possibilities. And he doesn't answer it for us. That's again why it's so hard, isn't it? Doesn't provide easy answers. Right? It provides interesting and challenging questions. We have two Duchamps at the National Gallery, and I think I'm probably, for time's sake, only going to show you one. We'll see, we might get the other one. Fresh Widow. And again, it's a French window, right, that he's changed the title of to Fresh Widow. Some people suggest 1920, just after the end of the war, that there were lots of fresh widows out there, right? The war had killed off a lot of the men, so there was a lot of fresh widows waiting. But there's no real connection between that and this little door. It looks like a full-size door, but it's about like yay, right? And you can tell probably from the little clear cabinetry handles on it as well, that it's fairly small, right? Fresh Widow. Now, what is this? This is not really a ready-made because he had it made. It's not something he found. What he did was he came up with the specs, the diagrams, and he took them to a professional carpenter. Build me this, here are the dimensions. Right? Then he got it back, and he took it to a professional shoemaker who filled all of the panes of the window with patent leather shoe leather. Right? So as you can see, this is, as you look at it, it's skin. Right? It's dyed animal skin in the windows. He wanted to be shiny like shoes, right? Like everyday shoes, he said. And in fact, he told them when it was in a show to make sure that they polished it every day as well. Right? Polish the leather in the windows. So it's interesting because it's a window that isn't a window, right? We've seen this scene in modern art. An artist playing with the idea of the window. A window is something you can see through. The frame of a painting is something that you look through to see the subject matter. Duchamp is giving us now a window, again, we cannot see through. It's an anti-window, isn't it? It's a Dada piece, exemplary Dada piece, right? The original function is denied in the finished work, like the fountain, like a snow shovel hanging from the ceiling. It denies the original function. Then he titles it, and you'll notice that the title is stenciled. He's not even now writing in that scrawly, unschooled script. Right? Even the quote-unquote signature on the piece doesn't reveal the hand of the artist. They're mechanical letters applied to the surface. Right? He copyrights it. Which is funny, right? This is copyright, and signs it without his own name, Rose Salavi. One of the many pseudonyms he used a lot, Rose Salavi. Now, the idea of copyright brings up the idea, of course, reproducibility, right? That it can be reproduced, but you have to ask him for permission. Right? So when something is copyrighted, there is this idea. It brings up the question of reproduction, doesn't it? Yet all of his works have brought up the question of reproduction, right? So reproduction is a Mona Lisa, a toilet that's a mass-produced object. His work has always dived into this idea of the unique work of art, which is what the Western tradition is based on. The unique work of art, or a work of art that can be reproduced. Exactly. Again and again and again. Copyright. Rose Salavi.
Yeah, but how can you, take the Mona Lisa?
Well, it was a postcard. It wasn't the real Mona Lisa, right? So he didn't go up and deface the real work of art. And again, it brings up the same thing that the fountain, which is that it's not a Mona Lisa anymore. At that point, that work of art is LHOOQ. Right? It's based on the Mona Lisa. Now, this is big rappers, big samples. At what point does that song stop being the original use of that song? Right? And at what point does it become the new artist creation? Right? copyright is all over that, isn't it? There are copyright lawsuits pretty much every 3 or 4 months from somebody sampling the song without crediting it or coming up with a riff that's just too close to the original. And what these issues are being addressed, right, 100 years ago. At what point does it stop being the original and start being the newly sampled music? How could he? Because he, first of all, came with a great idea, right? Of jerking you around, of making you think about her differently. That's what Morris was doing. Now, I want to come to this Rose Salabi thing. He had 2 different pseudonyms that he used that were cross-gender women. So this is Marcel Duchamp in drag. In a photo that he said lovingly Rose Salabi, alias Marcel Duchamp. Is that all right for him? Right? All these arms. And not really, just in a furry hat, right? But you'll notice in this particular case, in the photo, he spells Rose Salabi with 2 R's. Double R, Rose. And Salabi in French with an accent. I always forget that. In any event, again, you pronounce this in French. Elle, Rose, c'est la vie. That's what you got, right? C'est la vie is life. Elle, Rose, love is life. Lust is life. Eros, c'est la vie. He's again playing with names, and he's copywriting this to her. This is something he's done through his entire career. Yeah, we'll leave that at that. Right? What do we want to do? We got 20 minutes left. I'll quickly go into this. The other one we have that goes to this copyright issue, right, is something that he did after he stopped thinking. Late 20s or 1930s, Duchamp came up with this idea about making a limited edition version of everything he's ever done. Everything he's ever done in a box that could be carried around in a suitcase. And black over the because it's a box in luggage. Right? And he goes to a reproduction house, his quality reproductions of his painted work, reproductions of his other works that he's done to that point. Some of them have to be crafted in 3-dimensional replicas that can all be folded up and fitted together in a tight little box that will fit into a piece of work. And I think he's inspired by traveling salesmen. If you remember the old traveling salesman's luggage where they open it up and they got these versions of like chairs that they're selling or, you know, that's the idea, that a little version of everything he's ever done. In a limited edition, in 1934, there was a limited edition version of these. Here's a close-up of the box, right, the leather valise, that it all fit inside, right? And there are very specific order in which it can be opened. And there's a limited edition of 20 in 1934, and then there's an edition of 300 in 1960. And ours is from the 1960 version. Right, of the 300 of these, there are 100 green ones, and 100 red ones, and 100 tan ones. Right, we've got one of the green ones. But they're basically the same as the original here that came in the leather case. Right? So and again, it brings up this issue of originality. At what point is originality important as a criteria for art? Does art have to be entirely original or crafted by the artist's hand? That's the question, right? You may say, yes, it does. More power to you. But he's calling it into question. Right? Music today. How many of our most popular singers actually play musical instruments? You know? I was raised in my musical is late 60s, early 70s. So, and I was in grad school when the Clash was still together. So I'm all into like people who can play their instruments, and also people who think that maybe they shouldn't have to play them all that well. Right? It's perfectly fine, right? You listen to a Rose record and you think, I can do that. I'll go pick up a guitar. And of course you can, but you want to. That's a bad idea. Well, okay, the Bloodhound Valise, the box in a case, right? The box in luggage. Originally issued in 34, redone in 1960. And like I said, it's got reproductions and everything. So you get yourself your own little toilet, right? You get yourself your own little fountain mounted to the wall here. Up above that, here, it says on the little vial, this is the word that he gives it one time, it says 30 cubic centimeters of Paris air, right? So you close it off in Paris and take it back to New York with it. 30 cubic centimeters of Paris air. And you get your 30 cubic centimeters of Paris air, right? It also has reproductions of some of the other three-dimensional work. So if you get yourself a Bloodhound Valise, you get a nice little color reproduction with little museum tags like you would hang on the wall, right? So it's a traveling museum, like box that opens up, right? So there you get yourself a fresh window, right? And it even tells you where the original is, right? Catherine Dreyer lived in Philadelphia at the time. Right? You get yourself an LEOQ out of this as well. And each one of these are printed, and then Duchamp and his wife went in and tacked them all in on these pieces of cardboard, but only at the top, so you can lift them up and look at it. Sometimes when you lift them up, there's something written underneath as well, right? It's a script. I just saw that they reissued these in about 15 years ago, and there's one on Amazon for $600, which is not the 1960 version, but a later. I've had $600. I'd go pick one. They're all in plastic and cardboard now, the newer ones are. But I still would love to have this, right? Because it'd be so much fun. The centerpiece of it, the bit in the middle, is one of his most famous and largest works, the large glass in Philadelphia. This is head height, right? And that forms the centerpiece here, right? The bride stripped bare by her bachelor's evening, right? The bride's up here, he's playing. She's this figure here. She's a machine that's driven by low gas, and that gives you this, looks like a head gasket engine here, right? These are the bachelors down below. They're a rack of ready-made suits spinning around like it's a dry cleaner, and that machine that spins them is driven by a chocolate grinder here. Chocolate, sex, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea of the bride, even though she looks like a praying mantis stood there, well, the bride comes from a painting, and the painting is in the group. All his work interconnects, right? So the bride is here, this shape here, this thing here, right? Kind of cubist-looking thing. That's one of the reproductions you get. The bachelors are important enough to get a second reproduction over here, where we can see the different ready-made denim suits, right? All of this in the original sandwiched between two big pieces of industrial glass that he was transporting to a show 3 years after he did it, and they dropped it, and it cracked. And they go, oh my God, what's he going to say? And he goes, oh, now it's finished, right? Not a chance to crack. All of these works are intertwined. So you'll notice here, for example, as we look at a different view of some of the things inside the luggage, there's the chocolate grinder in a different painting that he worked up, right? Chocolate is sex, is the thing that grinds the beans to make the cocoa. That powers the machine that the bachelors spin around down below, having been inspired by the bride up above. You get other reproductions here of his more famous works. This is in your textbook. The Nude Descending a Staircase that caused a huge hubbub in New York in 1912 when it was shown. Tiny cubist, motion lines, a woman walking down a set of stairs, and you can see it's the reproduction on the left in his book. The idea is, of course, that you could get everything he ever did in one little box, right? Carried around about the size of a typewriter or something, right? And again, it raises this issue of what makes art art, right? What delimits or defines artistic activity, right? And the idea is, of course, that he wants, I think, at the end of the day, he wants people to understand the connections between everything he's been working on, but also then to continue to raise this question about reproducibility and whether or not that has any effect on art. If you want to know more about Duchamp, I got a modern art class in the fall. It's a WI for the core if you need it, and we spend a lot of time on Duchamp because these are the ideas that get us through the rest of the 20th century in everything, if you think about it. The idea of chance, right, the role that plays. The idea of presenting yourself as being unschooled, untraditionally schooled in the arts. So important, right? I mentioned punk rock as a great example of that, garage rock. Why do we call Iggy and the Stooges garage rock? Because it sounds like they never went anywhere but their garage to make it. They're not going to the studio. They're not going and learning how to play those instruments. Right? They're just flailing around drunkenly. Right? Sampling, originality. These are huge issues even today. And Duchamp is raising them all back in the teens and the 20s. Right? You had your hand up, and then we'll move over and talk about these here. I don't know how much these went for, but they went to very prominent people. This one on the left, right? Ours, it does not have the leather box. So the ones we've seen the leather box in them, even though ours faithfully reproduces everything in it. The original group with the leather box is 20 of those, right? The other ones, like I said, 100. They were issued out of Milan. I imagine they went for quite a bit because there's a lot of wooden craftsmanship involved, right? So in order to get the sandwich large glass, so we have people who see through it, right? They take the picture. I take the picture, and it's up against the wall, right? So you can't see through it as well. But you still have to craft all of that, the wood and it's mostly plastic. But get it damaging, get it reproduced, and those suits, those men's suits are slightly iridescent, right? You can almost see through it. Like a mica, lampshade, a mica lampshade, that's sort of rigid, see-through lampshade, right? Oil paper. But the toilets have to all be made one by one. I would like it once, right? If nothing else. Or postcards that I go with you, right? Just all these amazing ideas, which is all about, like, questioning the things that we take for granted, okay? These things here, right? He called these the standard stoppages. But what he did was he took and precisely measured a piece of yarn to be 1 meter long. The meter being international standard of measurement, right? 1 meter long. He then dropped it and glued it down to the land. Because it's no longer a meter when it lands. And then he made wood cutouts based on these. So his playing was taking these ideas and going a step further. They're big ideas. They're confounding. But that should be the point. Right? That should be what this whole 4 years you're in, wherever you are in that 4 years, should all be about. It's not about finding a job. Right? Why do you have a liberal arts course? Because you're going to be going places and having people in your mind, right? And try to get you to think about things in a way that you hadn't thought about them before. So that's the long and short of the show. I was going to talk about Hitler and the Nazis and all that, but we kind of already got to it. And I want to spend the last 10 minutes looking at, talking a little bit about the exam, right, what to expect. So what I mentioned at the beginning of class, is that I'm going to see how successful I can be. Wait a second. First thing I'm going to do is end the slideshow. So there's that, and then we'll try to do this. Oh, here, I've got it here instead. This would be easier. This is up on Blackboard now. I updated the study sheet with 2 different things. One, I noticed Come on, be good to me. Why is this not wanting to behave? Oh, it's them over there. Okay. I noticed that I had a curved neuron there that we didn't look at in class. I'm going to sit like this because then I can actually work the screen. I can't move over my shoulder. Okay. So I had a curved neuron there that was not in our discussion, so I changed it. And I left it red for you so you know which one it was in case you already got started. On the PowerPoint of the slides that parallel this list, I also had that one that we didn't talk about, so I changed that too. To the one where the two nudes are standing next to each other, the one that we did talk about. So you're not going to be tested on something you haven't seen or anything like that, okay? Right. The other thing I did, right, remember that the themes for the compare and contrast essay are here, some things to think about if you're reviewing your slides. But what I did at the very last page is I added something. So here's the basic format for the exam, right? Slide IDs, which again are words from the study sheet. There will not be anything on the straight IDs that aren't on the study sheet, where you have to identify the artist, the title, the approximate date is given there. You can be more specific, I don't care, but you better get it right. Right? So if it says early 20th century for a date, that's all you need. E20C will be plenty for you. Right? Early 20th century. L20C. Just don't make your E's and L's look like each other. Otherwise, I will not give you full credit. Likewise, if you just put 20th century, I will not give you full credit. Right? Because it's going to be early or late. So it's as given here. Okay? And the period as given here. So let's go back up to the top. Right? So the period is the stuff that's underlined. So it's let's take something we all know very, very well. The Degas dance class. You can imagine what that looks like, right? Ballerinas. Okay? Then if it came up, you would have to know it's Degas dance class, late 19th century, and Impressionism. And I may not ask you all 4 parts. I may only ask you 3. So make sure you answer what I'm asking. Okay? If I ask the date, don't give me the period. However, like on the midterm, if you make that mistake, if you give me the right answer to the wrong question, does that make sense? Right? And it's a right answer, then I'll give you a half a point. But since you didn't read the freaking directions, I'm not going to give you 100%. Okay? That seems fair, doesn't it? Read the questions. Okay? But, like I said, you're showing me you know something about it that may not be exactly what I asked. Okay? So, that's the first part. Second part, unknown slides, just like on the midterm. Slides by artists that are on that list. I'm not going to show you a slide by an artist that ain't on that list. I'm not going to show you Jan van Eyck. I'm not going to show you Giorgione. Right? I'm not going to show you El Greco. Because we cut that stuff off the list to make it more manageable. So it'll be something Baroque onward. It's in your best interest to write something down because unlike, for example, a health sciences exam where a wrong answer is worse than no answer. Right? Isn't that true? Sometimes you get these exams where if you write something that's wrong, it's worse than leaving it blank. That rule doesn't apply here. Write something down. Take a stab. Right? There's no embarrassment in that. And who knows? Right? 1 in 15 chance that you're right. Easier than the lottery. Right? So, what I will try to do is to not have artists repeat anywhere on the exam. So that means if we've seen Degas in the slide IDs, and we get to the unknowns, and you go, I don't know if it's Degas or Monet, and you've seen Degas already, okay, right? Your question's answered. Right? But I'm also in the unknowns not trying to trick you. Because trying to trick you only shows that I know more about it than you do, and I already kind of think I think I'm okay with that. Right? I'm comfortable with that. So, and I'm also comfortable if I don't. Right? So I want to know what you know. And tricking you is only what I know. So, right? Go with it, right? If you think it looks like a Vermeer, then there's a very good chance it's a Vermeer, right? There'll be some short essays where I show you works, probably works that we've talked about in some detail, and ask you to answer an open but fairly specific question. So, for example, let's say I showed you that Gauguin where the woman's reaching for the fruit, right, the words of the devil, right? We talked about it online. What if I showed you The Fresh Widow by Duchamp? I would say, what are some of the ideas about the role of the artist, right? And you could develop that as a brief essay. Right? So it's an open but specific question, but not just one right answer. Okay? Chance that tell me you know something about it. Okay? And it might be about the meaning of the work, it might be about the context, right? If I showed you Piet Mondrian, I might say, talk about the impact of World War I on his work. Okay? Something we talked about in class. Finally, because it's the final, it's going to be slightly longer than the midterm, although it will not be the entire 2.5 hours, right? Over the long time I've been teaching, anything longer than about an hour and 15 is just torture for both of us, right? By that time, you guys have shaped out into the ladder, right? If you're getting a B, you're getting a B at about an hour and 15, you'll probably still be getting a B in an hour and a half. Nothing's going to happen in there that's going to bump you up higher or lower, right? It will have done what the test is supposed to do, which is to determine how well you've learned the material. I can do that without 2.5 hours, okay? So it will not last that long, but it will last longer than the midterm because it is the final. So hour and 15, right? Lost my train. So there'll be 2 compare and contrast essays. There's only one on the midterm, right? And this will be the extra length, most likely, right? Where there'll be 2 works of art, like we talked about before, where you discuss each of them and then compare them. So you discuss each individually and then you compare the 2 of them. And in the comparison, don't just say, oh, they're both blue, but rather think about the subject matter of the 2 works. Is there anything similar or different, radically different about them? Think about the symbolism behind the subject matter. Is that where there's some connection between the 2? Is there a connection in shared or similar historical contexts? Or ideas that the artist is working with in each of the 2? Right? There'll be something that holds the 2 together. But there'll be different ways in which the artists treat that shared link. Right? Now, to make this easier, I'm going to choose them from one of these groups. Right? Both compare and contrast will be chosen from one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. And notice the first 3, I haven't decided if I wanted to show you the Cole or the Friedrich, the Duchamp or the Braque. Right? So what you can do is we can just say, well, what I say about each of these groups as you're preparing for the exam this Thursday. Right? Making it a little bit, hopefully, easier for you to do better. Right? What would I say if I saw Christophe's Girl in a Blue Armchair and Vermeer's Woman Holding a Balance? Solitary Women at Home Alone is our glue that holds them together. But then, where do we go from there? Right? What do we say about the Cassatt? Why did she paint that? What about the Vermeer? What kind of messages is he dealing with? Right? Matisse's Open Window Couleur and Duchamp's Fresh Widow. And by the way, they spoke Couleur wrong. I have to look twice. Right? But with both of those, okay, we've got the window metaphor, which we've seen as an important one for modern art. Now, what are the artist's ideas and how do they work out in those? And what makes them different in how they do this? That's the contrast part of it. Okay? So usually it's fairly easy to see that they have, if you think about the bullet points, they have things they share in common. Landscape metaphors, an approach to industry, paths to abstraction, It's all here, one place or another, right? Some things are off, they can drop them off of there, right? But they might come up in some of the shorter essays. So, one of the bullet points is images of royalty, right? None of the compare and contrast have that, but what if I showed you Jacques-Louis David's for a short answer and asked you, how do they depict royalty here? What aspects of royalty do we see? Right? So is this going to help? Right? This is up on campus now. This is my Word document. There's a PDF up on campus now. Bring writing implements, more than one, on Thursday next at 6:30. And those of you who are doing it through the registrar's office because of scheduling conflicts, make sure you contact from my email, Kathy Napper, and set something up there. She'll have a printed version of what we see on the screen. Right? I'll be here most of the afternoon on Thursday, so if you're freaking out and have last-minute questions, right, I'll be in my office from around, so I'm going to be here till 9, I'll probably get here around noon or 1. Right? I don't imagine I'll be from the beginning of the morning. Okay? So I'll be in my office. I'm also available by email over the weekend and in the interview. Right? Don't hesitate to ask questions. Be sure you use all the materials that are out there. Right? There's lots of things on Canvas. You can replay almost every single one of the lectures. You can replay if you missed something. Right? If for some god-awful reason you want to hear it again. Right? It's there. Okay? So good luck, and then, like I said, please let me know if